So fractionation will result, so fractionation is another way of changing or modifying the oils. Here, the palm oil. So how we do it? So we change or we modify the temperature. We kind of expose them to different cycles of temperature, and this variation in temperature cycles will lead to change in the conformation of the oil, of the palm oil. So this is why we are able to separate. Remember, we said it last week. So if we want to change the conformation, or even, for example, in the case of interesterification, we keep changing the temperature up and down so that we can remove specific fatty acids from the mixture, and these fatty acids that are the ones that we don't need, for example. Here, for example, if we want to keep monounsaturated fatty acids, so we play with the temperature, and then we're able to remove the saturated fatty acid. I remember, I think Michael. Okay, I shouldn't say names. Anyway, some of you asked me about interesterification and how we do it, like in the 3-2-1 question. I will give you real examples of interesterification, so you understand. I will give you another example of fractionation, how we do the fractionation, so then it is easier to understand. Then these unconventional, we can move to fully hydrogenated oil. So when we talk about fully hydrogenated oil, meaning saturated oil, and meaning these are in solid state. These are solid fates. Oils that have oils high in oleic fatty acid, these are sunflower, fully hydrogenated. So here we will have a conversion of all the monounsaturated fat to a saturated fat. This conversion, so going from a saturated to unsaturated, this will, in this case, we are sure that we don't have trans fat. And then this specific modified or novel oil in high oleic, that can be used in a blend with oil for either frying or for food processing. Okay, we are done with this. So what is today's message? Today's message is that there are different ways. There are different saturated, polyunsaturated fats. These saturated, polyunsaturated, they're coming from different sources, and they have different ways of processing. So either easy way, for example, olive oil. Olive oil, easy processed, pressure, and then the leftover can be done with solvent extraction. If the solvent extraction is done, this is not considered as an olive oil, as a virgin oil. Same for soybean. Soybean is one of the very important because it's a source of protein. Oil extraction is more complex than olive oil. So if you remember, so cold extraction, then solvent extraction that needs more processing, and within this processing we will have byproduct that is lecithin, that is soy lecithin, that is we are calling emulsifier. Then we have novel oils. These novel oils can be either genetically modified or coming from the plant breeding. Canola high in saturated fatty acid, soybean high in saturated fatty acid, and then we have other oil or other version, or they're called novel oils, but they're not exactly. So these are oils that are used, for example, in frying, that have a high, that resist to high level of temperature. And then we have different ways of making these different fats or oils. So we either do it by fractionation. Fractionation within the three, fractionation is like kind of we remove fractions within the fatty acid, within the triglycerol. So the three fatty acids, for example, we try to change the temperatures to focus in either the saturated fat or the unsaturated fat. And this is the way, the same principle as the interesterification. And we saw last week the interesterification. So this is today's message. And I highly encourage you, you don't have to tell me this or right. I'm happy to if you want to share. I suggest that after every lecture, you can you name 3 things that you have learned, 2 things that you didn't learn, or you do differently, or you still have, you will do differently, and 1 thing that you haven't learned, and you don't know, or you haven't, and then this 1 thing, you should tell me, because, so I am happy to meet one-on-one with every single student. I don't mind. Just let me know. Just email me. Or we can have an online. Now it's easy to have an online meeting if you have any questions. So because this is, if you have an unanswered question, these unanswered questions will keep accumulating and then until the exam, and sometimes it's kind of too late. So we are done with this. We'll take a break, and then we'll go with either the tutorial or we go with the other slides, the leftover. Should we take, okay, so let's take a 10-15 minute break and then we can come back. So when we talk about emulsifier, there are 2 parts. We have the non-polar part, or tail. So this is a tail. It's a non-polar. It is an hydrophobic one. Or it is lipophilic. So it doesn't like water, but it loves lipids or fats. So this is the part that is in contact with the lipid or the oil. Then we have a polar that is hydrophilic head. Hydrophilic, it likes hydrogen. So these ones, they usually, so this, by the way, these are just copy-paste from the slides, so you have everything in other slides. So the non-polar units, the tails, these are derived from fatty acids that have higher, at least 16 carbons. If you remember last week, and I said, it's written on your slides, and I said, lower, they may lead, lower fatty acid, C12 and lower than C16, may lead to the rancidity. So this is why it's preferred to have 16 carbons or higher. How does this work? So when we have oil in water emulsification, the tails, because they are lipophilic, they are oriented inside, so they're in contact with the oil. And then the ones that are hydrophilic, they are in contact with water. The opposite here, so this is just by combination. So this is how it works. How do I identify water in oil? So usually they have the same in appearance with naked eyes. So it's not easy. When, as I said, most of the cases, this is in general. Water in oil in water emulsion, water is a container. So this is why water or water-soluble constituent, proteins, etc., they should be in higher amount or higher proportion compared to the oil. The opposite, when we have oil in water, the emulsion, we should have an oil because the oil is a container, water is a dispersant, so we should have oil that is higher amount, or oil soluble content that are in higher amount compared to water. This is kind of like the basics. Then there are different ways, techniques, to identify. First, dilution test, the easy one. Then we have conductivity test, and then we have a dye solubility test. So how do these work? Dilution test. So we have our emulsion. This one works mainly for liquid or semi-liquid emulsions. So we cannot use it, for example, for butter or margarine. How do we do this? We dilute. We either dilute in water, so we add water, or we add a solvent, or oily, we add oily liquid, or liquid that is, another oil, for example, etc. So if we add a water, so let's say we have a oil in water emulsion, in this case. If we add water to it, what do we get? Nothing. The emulsion won't be disturbed. Our emulsion will be diluted, but it will remain stable because there is the oil in water. The droplets of oils are not disturbed. I'm recording, by the way. Then, if we add oil, the oil cannot be mixed here. And then here, the droplets, or the emulsion breaks, and the droplets will join the liquid, or the oily liquid that we use it, or we added, or we use it for the dilution. And then here, everything will break, and then they will form a layer. So I drew them like on the top because of the viscosity or the density. Okay? So this is why. Yes, how. The opposite, if we have water in oil, we add oil, nothing happens. We add water, then we have a disruption of, or a breaks of emulsion and a disruption of droplets of water that they can be put together. So if we have, for the top one, we do it, the consistency or the form shouldn't change. If we, in the bottom example, you will have a clear separation and you will have two layers, oil and water. Then we have a conductivity test. Conductivity, the basic principle of this test is that water is a good conductor of electricity. So we put our solution, or even can even be sausage meat, or can be another preparation, as long as the electrodes can be in contact with the product. So we put them together. And then there is a bulb light on the top. If this emulsion is oil in water, meaning water is in higher amount, meaning that the electricity can be conducted. So then the bulb will glow or will light, so we'll have light. If we have the opposite, water in oil, so then the continuous phase is oil. It doesn't conduct the electricity, meaning that there is no light. So this is another way. Then we have a third way of doing it, a dye solubility. So we add a specific dye. So there are two dyes. There is a dye that is called amaranth dye. It's a water soluble. And there is another dye, it's called scarlet red or red of Sudan, Sudan red. And it is oil soluble. So for example, I put the emulsion in red, in green, because we don't know. So let's say we have an X emulsion. We don't know what is it. We add droplets of a dye, and then we look at these under microscope. The dye is a water soluble. So if it's water soluble, and if our emulsion is oil in water, meaning the continuous phase in water, meaning the dye will be soluble in the continuous phase, and the continuous phase will be colored in red. And this is how we identify the oil in water. If the opposite, the continuous phase, it is oil. So the dye once solubilized in the continuous phase. It may enter in the globules, but not all in all the cases. But then if we look under the microscope, we'll see that the continuous phase is colorless. It doesn't have a color. It's kind of off-white. So this is how we identify the water in oil. And this same for the other dye. How do we create emulsions? We mix oils together. We mix preparations together. As they are, they will fluctuate and separate. So I'm talking about the left part. These are unstable emulsion. Then if we want to stabilize them, we either add the emulsifier. So sometimes they're called surfactant, biopolymer. We add, depending on the product, we can add texture modifier, thickener, gelling agent. We can add the carrageenan, we can add modified starch, etc. And then we can add either different maltodextrins or other starch as a weighing agent or a thickening agent. So the one that increases the viscosity. So water in oil emulsion are made by adding the water phase to the phase oil. So we add the smaller amount to the bigger amount. And then while agitating with a low energy prototype stirrer. So there are step-specific stirrers to do it. By doing this, there is a rough or random distribution of water droplets. So these water droplets, they usually have a size of 5 to 50 micrometer. Then the opposite, oil in water. Oil in water emulsion needs more energy and needs more high energy to homogenize, because it's not easy to homogenize the oil in water compared to homogenizing water in oil. So as I said, they need high homogenization. So these droplets are formed under turbulent flow conditions. So it's like a high level of agitation. The dispersed phase or the droplets of oil are smaller. They usually have an average of 0.5 micron. So the particle size distribution of dispersed phase, either fat or water droplet, they depend on the energy input. They depend on the interfacial tension, and they depend on the mass density. Basically, overall, they will depend on the chemical composition or the chemistry surrounding these droplets. So there are substances commonly used. Here I'm listing, and in the next slide I will give you I'm giving you the reference. It's a very interesting review that listed the most commonly used emulsifier. So when we talk about emulsifiers, we can have, for example, emulsifier surfactant. So these can be so there are exceptions that where these emulsifiers they are non-anionic. So they have no charge at the hydrophilic head. At the head, they're not charged. So usually these are monoglyceride or diglyceride. And then we have an anionic and the cationic. So they contain either negatively charged or positively charged function at their head. No. Then we have emulsifier amphiphilic biopolymers. So these ones, they don't have exactly the structure of a fatty acid that the one I showed you that with the head and the tail. They are emulsifiers, but they are more specific. These are mainly proteins or protein polysaccharide complex. They help increasing the emulsification, they help maintaining the water in oil emulsion, but they're more specific. And here, usually when we talk about this type of emulsifier, we're talking about casein, proteins that are present in milk or in cheese. Then we have texture modifiers and weighing agents. And I'm giving you the example here. So how do I identify in the labeling? This is how it can be done. So usually there is, oh, I forgot to tell you. Here, oh, it's coming in here. So here, these emulsifiers, these are food additives. And they have specific numbering. They are, I don't know if you have seen this before. It's an E100 to 200, E300, and E400, etc. And then by doing this, so you will know what type of emulsifier. So E400, what type of food additive or food chemical that is added to the food. And then, so usually the emulsifiers are in the 400. So here, for example, emulsifiers, in the labeling, you can see it written. Emulsifier, you can see it's soy lecithin. It's very common. And, or you see E476, or 476. So this is how you identify the emulsifier in labeling. Same here. See? So the ones in red, these are the emulsifier. So here, with emulsifier on the left, and then without emulsifier on the right. Commonly used in food. So the first table was just to show you the type of emulsifier, but these are the ones that are commonly used. So for example, if you're working in the food industry, and you're asked to I don't know, you have to find an emulsifier for chocolate. They're commonly used ones. So you don't have to reinvent things, everything, unless the food is very specific and you're creating a new formulation. But there is a list. So usually people, they don't bother. They have a list. And so you have a list of emulsifiers that are used for this specific food. You know this list, and then you go and to see if, for example, it is accepted or enlisted in a list of acceptable food additives in your government. So for example here, Health Canada, you go to Health Canada or Food Inspection website, and then you see the list of if, for example, 471 is acceptable and can be used or not. So this is how it's as easy as it is. I don't know if it's easy or I'm just saying this. So this is what I said. See? So these are the food additives in general. So when you see E100 or E120, so these are food coloring. So if you see it next time in the labeling, these are colors. If you see, for example, 300 something, these are antioxidants. If you see 427, 471, etc., these are usually emulsifiers, and then and so on. So this is how, these are rules. We cannot, these are rules and these are international names. So we can, E400 in Canada is the same as E400 in Europe, etc. The name is the same. Although there are lots of, they say, oh, it's kind of, there are differences, etc. But no, these should be the same because this is how it works. Okay, so same for here. This is just to give you an idea about. I forgot to give you the reference, but it's from a book. I will give it the book list of books I give you in the syllabus. It's from there. Here in a group, you can work alone if you want. I want you to identify the type of emulsion of the following product. Ice cream, some are easy. Ice cream, coffee cream, milk, cheese, beef sausage. I forgot chocolate. and mayonnaise. And then you have 5 minutes to do it. Okay, instead of cream cheese, I would write chocolate. So you do it in a, so you can work as a group, you can work alone if you want, and then you have 5 minutes and you can think about this. What are the types of emulsifiers or emulsification? Some are easy. We saw them last week. You don't want to work in a group? You see everyone working alone. So, have an idea? Any questions? Who's working on chocolate? Is someone working on chocolate? And Rita, you. Ah, I knew that was so. Yeah, coming to you. No. It's okay. I'm not answering your question. Anyway, it's not. You're talking about the cacao, right? So if someone wants to share or to talk about their topic, feel free. I remember last year there were people, very brave people. At the break, they were talking about their own topic. Yeah, I remember the girl over here. They were. Don't go to online and check the multiplication. Now I'm recording. Okay, so this is for the cheese. Another example, chocolate. Chocolate, you said water in oil. No, you said water in oil, and you said. So what is it? It should be oil. Okay, oil in water, but you will find in other papers or books, they say the opposite. So the purpose of the principle is that water is spread in the cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is one of main main ingredients of chocolate. So this is why we have droplets. You have a few smaller amount of water or water-soluble ingredients that are dispersed in the cocoa butter. So it is water in oil. Same for here. Emulsifier is soy lecithin. Easy. Take lecithin, you will see it everywhere. And then you see here, emulsifier, they have the PGR. This is another food additive. And here they have artificial flavor, etc. So, what else? Beef sausage. You said oil in, you said water in oil. I don't remember, what did you say? I think some of you said water in oil, and some of you said what, oil in water. It is a dispersion of fat particle in a matrix of solubilized. See, it doesn't have to be, chocolate is a solid, so, and then here, this one, beef sausages are solid. So, dispersion of particle of fat. So fat, it shouldn't be in a higher amount compared to the other ingredients. So fat should be dispersed within the food matrix that already contains proteins, etc. And non-meat ingredient. Here, phosphate or phospholipids can be used as emulsifiers or stabilizers. So I know it was very short, but these examples will, I hope they gave you an idea about how to identify emulsifier. So you remember, emulsifier is something, oil, droplets, either oil or fat, that is dispersed in a larger amount of ingredients within the food matrix. Can be either liquid and solid. And in here, I gave you the examples of emulsifiers. And then if you go back to the table, so you can see the list, and you can see the purpose and what. So next time, I hope, when you go home, and if you look at the food ingredients, you will be able to identify emulsifiers, and you will be able to identify other chemicals or other ingredients. This take-home message from this tutorial: first, as I said, identify, differentiate between oil and oil, oil and water, and water and oil. I forgot to tell you something. Oil and water and oil are the simplest examples of emulsions, and they're the most common. But there are others that I didn't cover, and I'm not covering. I'm just giving you the information for your knowledge, so that you know. There are other more complex emulsification or emulsion, where we have water in oil in water, or there are different layers. These are more complex food, or oil in water in oil. Or, for example, ice cream. Ice cream, you should just consider it as oil in water, but ice cream, it is, you may see it in books, for example, it is oil in air in water, because there is an air here. So there is kind of a three dispersion. But the most common, if you have it in exam, the ice cream is, no, you won't have it. I'm just telling. Ice cream is oil in water emulsion. Okay? So let's take a few minutes break, the time that I do my and then this was an example of modified or maltodextrin product. I'm not able to see it on my screen. So the fibrosol. Fibrosol or Matsutani, it's a product. It is an example of dietary fiber. So these are undigested. These are modified maltodextrin or fiber. I'm not able to see on my screen here. So these are, so how they are made? They are made from starch, so the maltodextrin are processed. So there is a different, so these maltodextrins coming from the starch, they are processed by pyroconversion, so heating at higher temperature, and enzymatic treatment. So these two, so this maltodextrins are a long chain of starches or of sugars. So they are hydrolyzed at alpha-1,4 linkages. So the long chains are cut at these linkages, and then there is a random formation of alpha, beta, 1, 2, and 1, 3 linkages. So this is the star, and this is the form. So, and then the linkage are on, so it's cut here, and the linkage, and then it's randomly formed or readjusted or reformed. This random formation will make it specific, so it's the same. It will be a polysaccharide, same as a starch, but the conformation is different. And this is why, how it makes it resistant to digestion. So because the digestion enzymes cannot recognize it easily. And then this, from this conformation or modification result not only a starch or a polysaccharide that is resistant to digestion, but it is also a fiber that is water soluble. So this conformation will help to it to become water soluble. A study conducted by the company that made this fibersol or modified maltodextrin. So, for example, it is sold in Canada and it's used in different food ingredients. And it is known in the list of ingredients, it's named maltodextrin, modified maltodextrin. So it's very rare that you see fibersol, except if you're really getting the fibersol as a pure product. The study conducted by the company showed that it has beneficial effect. So it doesn't increase blood glucose level, so it has lower glycemic index. It promotes the bowel function, and it reduces serum LDL, cholesterol, and serum triglyceride. Health beneficial effect, but the study was conducted by the company. I think there was only one paper conducted on here, but it is an example of a modified maltodextrin. It has functions of good in terms of food processing or in terms of food functional properties. A good thing is that it is soluble, so it's easily soluble, and it can be easily mixed with the product. So if we move to other example of polysaccharide, so I gave you the example of tapioca starch that is used to make bubble tea. So bubble tea comes from a starch that is produced from or extracted from the root plant cassava. So here we need to distinguish between cassava flour and cassava starches. So the way how both products are extracted or are made are different. And then here we're talking about starch. These polysaccharide and etc. So a way of making it is different. So there is an extrusion. I think there are people that may even make it at home. So there is like a specific extraction, extrusion, and then making the bubbles specifically. So it's done either in like at home or in an industrial setting. So this is another example of polysaccharide. Another known polysaccharide is inulin. The inulin is considered as a prebiotic. So by definition, a prebiotic is an ingredient that gives beneficial effect through the modification of a gut microbiota. So prebiotic, they can help or promote the growth of beneficial microbes in our gut because of their specific composition. They have it's a reserve of oligosaccharide that are present in some plant species. This inulin contains fructose instead of glucose as a repeating unit. So if you remember, like starch, they have glucose as a repeating unit, different starches, and here cornstarch, here is a fructose. Usually there are units of 30 up to 30 fructose, and with a terminal of a glucose unit. So here, as written here. The main source of a commercial inulin is roots, chicory. So these are, these are one of the main sources of. Then we have pectins. Pectins are polysaccharides that are present in the plant cell wall that are closely associated with the cellulose. So these are polysaccharides mainly present in protein. Why? In apples and fruits, etc. They're extracted as a food ingredient from apples and citrus peels. So usually from the peel. So this is why, for example, we can sometimes we can make a jelly at home just by using peels. Apple peels or pear peels, and just keep boiling them and, until they become viscous. So the peel, they contain the pectins. They are rich in pectin. These are gelling agents because they increase the viscosity, and they can be used as a jam in jams, preparing jams, making jams, or jellies. Jams, they contain fruit, they can contain either pectins that are naturally present in fruits, or we can add the pectins as an addition. So it depends. What is the structure of pectin? These are polysaccharides. They contain the galacturonic acid. So this is the structure of the galacturonic acid. It's an acidifying agent. And a neutral sugar rhamnose. So I didn't draw it here, but then the pectin, usually it's a very long chain with a galacturonic acid, with the presence inside of molecules of rhamnose, like randomly dispersed, and then sometimes they have a ramification. So imagine the same thing as the starch structure, or like amylose and amylopectin, like a long, imagine something like the amylose, a long chains, but then here there are a few ramifications where we have rhamnose, we can have other sugars, but the main is the galacturonic acid. The galacturonic acid, as you can see it here, it has exactly the same form as the galactose. So the galactose, if you remember, it's a sugar present in milk. It's a sugar milk. The main difference here, as you can see, I put it in blue. You don't have it in your slide. You put it in blue. It's the presence of a carboxylate acid group at a carbon 6. So this is the main difference between the galactose and glucuronic acid. Pectin. In the pectin, this is an animation. I don't think you have it. I'm sorry. I think I kind of put an animation, but it covers what you have in your slide. So pectin, this galacturonic acid, is present as in three forms. In a form of ionized or non-ionized, COOH, is in ionized form, so where the H plus is removed and we end by getting COO minus, or as a methyl ester. A methyl ester is COOCH3, and a methyl ester, as we all know, has a structure of RCOOR. So it has three forms, and these three forms will lead to what we call the high or low methoxyl pectin. So when we have a dominant unit, or where we have the methyl ester for glucuronic acid, so when we have a dominant unit as a containing COOH3, here we have high methoxyl, we call it high methoxyl pectins. So it has mainly the unit containing COOCH3 here. When we have, and the opposite, when we have a galacturonic acid that is either ionized or non-ionized, here we are talking about low methyl pectin. So it doesn't have methyl ester. It has lower methyl. So this is why we call it low methyl ester, low methyl ester methoxylpectin. High methoxyl because it has dominant methyl ester, the COH3, while the low opposite doesn't have. And this will lead to, this is how we make, for example, we can differentiate between two types, and then this is what we need to make the jam, for example. What jam making, so we need fruits, we need high methoxylpectin, we need the one that has a methyl ester, the COH3. This is how, and this one is present in fruits and vegetables, obviously. And even for the one that we find in the market, the dominant form is the HM. When we add fruits, when we mix fruits, we add pectin, or even the pectin that is present in the fruits. We add sugar. We sometimes add acid. So, for example, I don't know, citric acid or acetic acid is added, and water. And there are different proportions. And then there is a increase of temperature. The addition of acid and the acidity of the fruits that we are using to make the jam, they help dropping the pH. The drop of the pH will help to avoid the presence of non-ionized carboxylate group. So here we're making sure that we don't have non-ionized or non-ionized. So non-ionized may change the pH. So this is why we don't have it. So here the pectin contains non-ionized groups. And this is how we can make the jam. So how do we do it? The fruits are boiled, with sugar, acid, and pectin. Same for the amylose and amylopectin here. Same for starch, jellification, same principle here. We have a pectin in fruits that leach out in the water. Remember the first time we spoke about amylose that leaches outside the structure? Here we have a pectin that leaches. Then we have, because there is an evaporation, we have about 60% of water that evaporates, and then the water content will drop as it evaporates. Then, because of a change of water content, and then the cooling down, same as the jellification, remember, of the starch, here we'll have a formation of gels. The gels of pectin, they form from the interaction of the pectins to form, remember, the junction zone. So to form this grid, remember, same principle as the starch jellification. So we have and then when temperature drops, then we have from the formation of these grids or the junction, junction zone, which result in a formation of a structure that is, I call here a 3D structure, but it's a gel that is formed, like a consistent one. Here, together, we have the fruits, pieces of fruits. We have the sugar that was added, and all together, they will be held or imprisoned inside the network. So we have the network that is made, or the junctions that are formed with the pectin. Remember, the junctions are formed by the pectin. And then inside these holes, we have all these together, fruits, sugar, etc. The sugar, the good thing is that the sugar helps stabilizing the junction zone by binding water. So here, the water, the jam, the AW of jam drops, because it's not only because of the evaporation, but it's also because the sugar is binding with the water to decrease the AW. And this binding will help to stabilize the junction. So the junction are no longer in contact with high amount of water, so they are more stable. And then, so as I said, so the activity drops because of evaporation and because of the binding with the sugar. And the drop of the temperature, this is what helps preserving the jam. The jam. The opposite. So how about making a low sugar fruit spreads? So when we make low sugar fruit spreads, we usually use low methoxyl pectins. We don't use high M or HM because the high methoxyl groups or components, they need the presence of oxygen to gelify or to make the gel. So instead, if we want to have a low sugar fruit spread, we use, instead of using the HM, we use the LM, so the low methoxyl pectins. And we add the calcium. Here, in this case, there is a gel formation due to a bridge. So if you remember, so these are anionized. We have an O minus that forms or interact with the calcium. And this interaction will help forming a calcium, what we call a calcium salt bridge. And this will help in maintaining a structure of this jam of this spread. As I said, so the pH must be higher than 3. Why? This is to make sure, to ensure the ionized groups are maintained. Here, because if we don't have higher pH, we may lose the ionized group, so we won't be able to see this O minus. And if we cannot see this, there is no interaction with the calcium, and then in this case, there is no gel formation. So there is no calcium bridge salt formation, and there is no gel. So this is why we have to play with the pH. If we want, for example, if we are making the low sugar fruits, we can play with the pH. So people play with the pH and add different constituents to make sure that the gelification is maintained. And this is how it looks. So this is what we call egg box arrangement. So you have the pectins, so the low methoxyl pectins. These are connected together as a bridge, connected together with the calcium. And the calcium is imprisoned in these alveoles. So this is what, it reminds you the egg box. So inside there is a calcium. So this is what makes it work. With this, we are done with this lecture. So just remember from this lecture, we need to know the difference between different sugars, how they are, at least what are the units. So at least we know that, for example, the starch contains amylose and amylopectins. Amylose are linear, and amylopectins are configurated, 1,6 alpha 1,6 linkage. We know that when we have the gelification, we know that the amylose starts leaching from the structure. Same for the from the pectins. We have high methoxyl pectins or low methoxyl pectins. These, because how do we distinguish between them? it depends on the structure, or it depends on the form of the galactonic acid that is present. So if it's presence of methyl ester, these are high methoxyl, and then these are the ones that can be used to make jam. Making the jam, gelification, principle of gelification is the same as starch. So we have increase of temperature, the leach of a linear form of polysaccharide that helps making this network or the tight junction. The tight junction. Tight junction is something different. The junction or the junction zones or this grid or this connection. In the case of pectin, I'm recapitulating so that you can remember. In the case of pectin, what I'm going to say? Oh, shouldn't. I forgot. I was going to say something. I just recapitulate. So in the case of pectin, yes, AW is important. Remember this. AW, the jam, so AW decreases because of water evaporation and because of the presence of sugar. So sugar binds with water. And then together we'll drop the AW. The drop of AW will help preserving the jam for a long time because the AW is higher than the IW where microorganisms can grow. And this will also help in maintaining the gel structure. When we talk about low methoxyl pectins are used for low sugar, low methoxyl, low sugar. Remember, low sugar spreads or jams. So these are spread, we cannot really call them jams, or gelling agents, or jellies. But we need to maintain a specific pH higher than 3. So then the bridges that form to make the gel that form with the calcium are maintained. With this, I think we are done. We still have 20 minutes for people. I will stop recording. Sorry, I was supposed to record all of it, but then I was talking and I forgot. But we have at least an hour of recorded lecture, so this is good.